Hello and welcome in to the NFL Draft Show on Infinity Sports Network. And for the first time in 53 years, the draft will be hosted in Chicago, my hometown. I'm Noah Taborda, live from Chicago. And in Oregon right now, the opposite, or not the opposite completely, but, far away, home of Marcus Mariota and home of our co-host, Carl Mogline. Carl, how are you?
You know what? I need to start by asking a question. What is the opposite of Chicago? You're like right in the middle. I mean, is it the bottom of Texas or... the real question is it the bottom of Texas? Is it like Florida? Is it San Diego? I don't know. I got a lot of questions for you. And hopefully I'll have a lot of questions tonight. Well, if you want to follow me, I'll be hopefully live tweeting a bunch of the draft at Carl_PM. That's Carl with a K, so KARL_PM. So that's where you can find me on Twitter. And I'll probably make a couple comments. And they're going to be amusing, so go check out my Twitter. And I know you can go check out Noah's Twitter as well, so Noah, why don't you hit us up with that Twitter?
Yeah, and you also, guys, you just got to hear a cameo from my aunt, who got to call my name like 2 or 3 times. So I hope you enjoyed that. That's probably the most you're going to get of her today. And I know that's probably going to be the best part of the show. But hopefully it's not. Anyways, you can find me on Twitter at Noah Taborda. I will also have occasional amusing tweets. Not probably as amusing. But definitely excited for this draft to get underway. We're going to have a couple of guests on the show. First of all, we're going to have Miles Klotz, who's going to be on probably pretty early on, right after the Jaguars pick at number 3. We are going to have Sam Maradi on around 7:15, 7:30, breaking down the NFL for the rest of the night. He's a Bears fan. We may have Jake Liker on, probably towards the end near the Packers pick. We'll have Chris Gleason on around 7:30 here. Of course, depending on where you are. By the way, we are talking about Central Time because I'm the one running the show. But lots of great stuff to talk about. We are, 12 minutes away from officially getting the draft underway. Of course, we're going to have Tampa Bay on the clock first. But it's not Tampa Bay that really has had, as big of the storylines so far during this pre-draft process. It's been the Titans. It's been off-field issues. We got a lot to talk about. But, Carl, let's get started with some of the news surrounding the Tennessee Titans. We won't go too far in depth in this, as we'll talk about it after the Tampa Bay Buccaneers make their pick and before the Titans. But we've got rumors. You've got Cleveland maybe making a trade. You could have the San Diego Chargers making a trade, the Chicago Bears making a trade, the Philadelphia Eagles, the New York Jets. All 5 of those teams are in talks, according to sources, with the Tennessee Titans. Carl, what are your thoughts on these potential deals?
Yeah, and I've also heard the Chargers. I've heard the Chargers as well. I feel like there's just a ton of teams, but
well, Carl
Ed Warner saying that the Titans are basically they want to.
Is worth it. They want picks is the desired so they can get the deal done. In terms of the teams, I really don't think the Bears are going to end up getting it done. Apparently, they're not interested in Jay Cutler. The Titans aren't. The Jets, I think that could happen, but I don't know if the Jets can quite offer as much, and I think they'll stay with the idea of maybe a team that can give them 2, maybe the Saints even. I don't think that's going to happen. I think the Chargers, out of all the teams for me, is the most likely. I mean, you got Phillip Rivers, a guy who Ken Whisenhunt has said he is very appealing to him. I mean, to reunite with him would probably be great, and they've had a working relationship, so that'd be something that works. And they've also got a first-round pick in there, so that would be something appealing. Of course, they would lose the opportunity to draft Gurley, but I'm sure they'd rather take a guy like Marcus Mariota, who could be the face of the franchise for years to come. All right.
Yeah, those links. I mean, they just can't be ignored, really. I mean, when you've got a coach who's worked with a player and who really likes a player, I think it's hard to ignore. And the new the new San Diego system, I think fits much better with a spread type quarterback than it does with Phillip Rivers. Phillip Rivers is not known for his legs, and the new San Diego system wants a quarterback to make a couple more plays like that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, the Titans, they've got a very good situation here for me. I think they've got a lot they can do. Moving on to another team that I hadn't originally put down, but who want to trade back, and they are trying to do this aggressively, the Washington Redskins. Apparently in a situation they would prefer maybe to trade back, get an extra pick. They are at about, I think it's 7 picks right now, 7 or 8 picks in the draft right now, and they are looking to hit the number 10 for this draft. What are your thoughts on the potential Redskins trade to move back?
I think this is really coming out of the fact that they're missing I think they've got a lot of holes in Washington. Mm-hmm. I think that's the biggest reason they do this. So basically, because of those holes, they need to look for a place to get back and get multiple good players instead of just one in Dante Fowler Jr., who's the likely pick there. I've seen him a couple times. Or somebody on the line either there, or maybe Vic Beasley as an outside linebacker. I think they want a couple players who can really make an impact, and I think you can get those impact players, especially, this is a very deep D-line class. There's a lot of depth there. There's a lot of depth at receiver. There's places where they can pick later. They can pick up talent.
And, of course, I mean, with Ray and Gregory dropping, which we'll talk about in a second, they could theoretically get maybe one of those two in the second round. We'll see if that pans out. I mean, they could also trade back maybe even 3 picks to the Atlanta Falcons if they're willing to trade up. Go ahead and get a late pass rusher maybe there. Or if they're not so sure, they can trade back even farther. It's a very good question as to what they're going to do. But speaking of Ray and Gregory, both had marijuana issues. Both plummeting down draft boards. And then there's the third player, Lyle Collins, currently involved in a murder investigation, though at this point he is not a suspect. Still, teams have taken him off their draft board, and they have said that until there's a resolution, this guy is undraftable. So, Carl, let's start with Lyle Collins. How far do you think he's going to drop?
I mean, I just don't see him going today. I mean, there's a possibility some of this can get cleared after the draft. I mean, he's gone back to Louisiana, so there's a possibility we get something by day 3, some resolution, and he gets picked pretty early in, say, around 4 type of scenario. But I don't see him going 1, 2, or 3 because I just don't think he can get cleared by then. And I think that last year, maybe the year before, he's getting picks still. But I think there's just so many issues in the NFL. People want good PR right now. They don't want to be in a bad spot, and I think a lot of NFL teams are kind of thinking PR is a big part of this. I think this has also come up with the Jameis Winston pick in Tampa Bay. I don't think it's going to stop them, but I think it definitely came into their mind because teams are really focusing on making sure they've got all right PR, and it's surprisingly important now in today's NFL, and I think it's a good thing because people are not just picking the best player, but the player who really represents their franchise the best.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of those kinds of issues, Roger Goodell was just on ESPN with Chris Berman and talking about some stuff that he learned and how he's got to uphold the policies. But it was a tumultuous year for the NFL last year, and I definitely think they are going to be looking to at least try to clean it up a bit. I don't know if teams are going to be as willing to go after players that may have issues. Of course, with a guy like Shane Ray and Randy Gregory, who's more marijuana issues, it may not be as big of a deal. But with a guy like Collins, who's involved in a murder investigation, coming off the Aaron Hernandez conviction and that whole saga, I find it highly unlikely that teams are going to be willing to go out and get him, even if he isn't a suspect. Unless it's settled, there are going to be a lot of teams wary of that. And as we've heard, teams taking him off the draft board, saying he's undraftable. if there isn't a resolution by day 3, it wouldn't shock me if he goes undrafted, even if he's incredibly talented. Maybe 7th round. I mean, definitely there's going to be a team that would go out there and maybe risk it. But it's interesting to see how late he could go, how early he could go. Speaking of other guys that are dropping, and this is also over the past couple of days, Shane Ray and Randy Gregory, 2 phenomenal outside linebacker, defensive end, edge rush type players, both of whom were first-round locks, and Gregory for a while thought a top 10 lock probably since this time last year. Shane Ray quickly moving up draft boards, but both of these 2 players were thought to be first-round picks a couple of days ago. Now, not so. They have dropped, and they have dropped quickly after both having marijuana issues. Carl, where do you foresee them going, and what do you think the impact this is going to have overall on the draft stock?
Okay, there's 2 reasons I think they drop. The first reason is clearly the thing that people have issues with them, and at a certain point they're just too talented to not pick. But I think that another reason why they can get picked up late is because there's certain organizations that are much better at turning around a player. And that's why I think we both have Indianapolis taking Shane Ray. I could see them going a couple ways, but that's a possibility. And I think a big reason why that's such a legit possibility is just because it's a stable organization. I think stable organizations have a better chance of taking those kind of outside players. And so I think that that's one of those things where we can see that certain players they're kind of untouchable to teams that are in a tumultuous situation. But when that type of player goes to, say, New England, which, excuse me, I misstated, but you have him going to New England, I think that's a situation where they can thrive in a lot better because there's a program and there's a better situation than if you're going to a team with a new coaching staff who just lost a lot of games. It's a lot harder to go into that system and not be worried to have an incident.
All right, well, we are winding down the time. We have just under 2.5 minutes. So, Carl, you're a Vikings fan. Give me what you're looking for, not only today in day 1, the first round for the Vikings, but overall in the draft. How do you hope they attack the 2015 NFL draft?
All right, I think there's 3 big positions of need for the Vikings. I think there's more than that, but I think there's 3 that I really want to address, and I'd like to see these addressed all by round 3 unless there's a player we can steal and get higher than that. I think the first 2 positions we need to address are cornerback and wide receiver. And then after that, it comes linebacker. And so linebacker may come in round 2, especially with a couple of the prospects that could be sitting there. But with this first pick, I think there's only 2 players even possible. Devontae Parker out of Louisville and Trey Waynes out of Michigan State. Those 2 players have been either or on Vikings mock drafts. I see Trey Waynes just a little bit more, and I personally project Trey Waynes. 1, Devontae Parker could be gone. And 2, what we see with Trey Waynes is especially him being opposite of Xavier Rhodes. You've also got Harrison Smith. The Vikings secondary, especially in the NFC North, would be a formidable one, which is something you really need in the division where you have so many good quarterbacks. And even if Jay Cutler is not a great quarterback, he can throw the ball, and that's about all he's good for. He can throw it far. So, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. He can throw it far, so we can have corners who can actually do something with that. And so I think that's one of the biggest things we need to look at is the Vikings secondary is the big need. If Devontae Parker's there, Trey Waynes is gone, I take Devontae. But with how I see it going, I think that Trey Waynes is going to be our guy.
All right. Now for my Packers really quickly, as we are now under a minute before the Buccaneers will go on. Roger Goodell will be out soon. But for the Packers, look, there are the 2 positions. Like you said, you had wide receiver and cornerback. Packers also have cornerback after losing Tramon Williams. The other one is inside linebacker, position that a lot of people have had the Packers drafting. After that, you go defensive tackle is probably the next biggest with tight end thrown in there a tiny bit. That'll be very, very intriguing to see what we do in the first round as there are a lot of options. Unfortunately now, we are missing the really big hype